I get those goosebumps. I get those goosebumps every time I'm around you. Lose your mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times. I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype, throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC as I adjust my camera. Hope you're all well on this fine Sunday evening on the eve of the transfer deadline day, which I think we are all going to be delighted to see the back of 7 p.m. tomorrow night. But there's still lots to discuss, still lots up in the air, and this is why we're on tonight. And we've got a fantastic guest. A superb guest to come in and talk all things Newcastle United and transfers. Mark Douglas, very, very shortly. He will be arriving with us around sort of 8:30 time. It was meant to be 7:30 for those that had got their eagle eyes out. However, he has got a little bit of work to do, whether that's transfer-related work, we don't know. We can maybe ask him the question when he arrives. But that's Chris. How are you? How's things?
All good, all good. All good. Yeah, looking forward to this shutting down, as in like this transfer window closing. 22 hours and 53 minutes left in the window. I think we're probably closed for business now, unless something tweaks it a bit, or unless we sell a Willock or something like that. But and I'm happy to go with Nick Waltermaid and Isak and slowly integrate Isak back in. But let us see how it plays out in those final hours. Chris, how are you?
Good, mate. Yeah. Nice day with the family. My dad came round to come and see sons he couldn't see yesterday for a birthday, so he came on today, which was lovely. Watched some very, very interesting 2 o'clock kickoffs today. What with Brighton beating Man City and West Ham thrashing Nottingham Forest. Yeah. Hope you're well, Wolfie. So yeah, some interesting football this afternoon, and then obviously none more so interesting than the 4:30 kickoff as well, which I managed to catch as well. But yeah, I'm good, mate, and a bit like yourself, Daz, and Pete. I'm sure you're the same. Looking forward to the conclusion of the transfer window. It's been a long summer. My thoughts, I still think there is one deal to be done. I still think there'll be one deal to be done. Whether it'll be a striker, I don't know. You know what, boys? I know we all keep talking about it, but I'd love to see another central midfielder come in. I really, really would. I'd love another central midfielder to come in, and if that means one's got to leave, so be it. But yeah, I still feel like there's one deal to be done, and weirdly, I don't think it's going to be a striker, but that's just a good feeling I've got. But Pete, how are you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, all good. Coached my daughter's team today. Really competitive game, really good game, actually, good game of football. So that was nice to start off the day. And then, yeah, just chilling, helping my mum out with a few bits, watch a little bit of football. I'm so glad to see Callum Wilson score today. And it was a superb goal as well. Really, really good header. Obviously, he's no longer at Newcastle, but obviously he'll go down as a very important player for Newcastle United. So it was really good to see him score again. You could see the emotion on his face when he put that into the net and was celebrating. You could tell how much that meant to him. So didn't quite do it in the last couple of years at Newcastle United, but great to see him score today. And yes, Wolfie is being hammered in the 12th match. tomorrow will be very, very interesting. There'll be a few cookings going on, and I may well just escape one, but we shall see. Look, you both sort of briefly touched on it. I think it's an important topic to discuss. We are less than 24 hours away now. Was it less than 23 hours away now, just until the window shuts, and people are talking about it. The bit that I'm interested in is the change of tone with the Liverpool fans with regards to this Alexander Isak situation. Because I've been keeping an eye out on Liverpool accounts all the way through this, but in particular the last week. And I think there is very much a tone change in how confident Liverpool are in getting their man, in getting Alexander Isak. What was really interesting today, and we can maybe bring this up with Mark later on when he joins us, but looking at, there was a particular one here. So it was a two-piece from David Ornstein that was said this morning, I believe. And there's a little bit of reading there. He says, I don't think Liverpool are sort of actively doing much at the moment around Alexander Isak's situation, because they would have felt that 110 million offer was the place that pretty much they were prepared to go. We know previously they had indicated a willingness to do the deal around 120 million. So, of course, there will be some wiggle room on that part, but I don't necessarily see them wanting to go much or any higher than that. Newcastle have been clear on their stance, as he mentioned, something around the 150 million mark. And he goes on to say in the last part about bids coming in. Maybe Liverpool sit back and see if Newcastle come to them and open the door, because Newcastle have committed a significant amount of money. It's clear he's intent on making the Liverpool move, feels an increasing expectation across the industry, but that doesn't count for much that he will go. And I thought that was a really interesting point, and it sort of changed the tone for a lot of Liverpool fans and a lot of Liverpool accounts when that was dropped this morning. Now, I believe we have someone earlier than expected in the green room, which is great to see. So we might as well bring our special guest out to have this conversation right now. So let's bring in the iPaper's own Mark Douglas.
Welcome, Mark.
Hello, guys. You okay? How's it going?
Not too bad.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. I know we've been talking for a while to try and obviously arrange this, and it's been manic reporting on Newcastle United with all things going on. So we do appreciate you so close to the end of the window taking the time to come and join us. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. It's a bit of a strange one at this point, isn't it? Because these are absolutely kind of critical hours in the Isak saga. I mean, this is kind of it hasn't been. I would have thought by this point we'd have had some clarity on it. So coming on this late obviously opens me up to the idea that I come on and say a load of things, and then even while I'm talking, something drops. But I'll try my best to kind of like give you a summary of where we stand. And I think it's fair to say, like you've just shown that tweet there from David Ornstein, who's fantastically well connected guy. The amount of transfer exclusives that he gets, and he's a bit of a legend in our industry. And if he's talking like that, basically saying, look, boil it down, we don't know what's going to happen. I think that kind of tells you an awful lot about, the kind of the air of uncertainty still around Isak, which is kind of crazy, really, because you would think that 24 hours, less than 23 hours, sorry, to get the biggest deal in English football history done, it is not enough. 23 hours to me, I still feel that there would have had to be, and this is not ruling it out, but there would have to have been, I think, some kind of back channel chat today, which obviously, because that would be so sensitive, it doesn't surprise me that hasn't necessarily leaked at this point. If there had been some back channel chat, there would have had to have been some kind of contact between the two parties at this point, because you couldn't just, I can't see a bid dropping, let's say at 10 o'clock tonight, of 115 million, which is rejected instantly. I'm not saying everything could potentially happen at this point, but I don't see what the point in that would be. There wouldn't be any point at that. You know, it'd be more likely Liverpool wouldn't bid if they were going to come in at that, something like that. They've always said consistently that they will only bid if they feel there's a route to actually getting the deal done. And the fact that they haven't bid yet tells you that we're getting into the last 23 hours of the transfer window, and they don't yet see a route to make that deal happen. Can that change in the next 23 hours? Like, I'm still not ruling it out. You know, but it's funny that Saturday in particular, I think it's been much quieter today, which, you know, always kind of makes you wonder exactly what's been going on behind the scenes. But it does tell you a lot on the last 23 hours. Look, Liverpool were very quick to dismiss Jan Fjortoft's suggestion yesterday that a deal had been done. I think, you know, at the Liverpool end, sources there really dismissed that when it was very much, you know, rubbished. And I think Newcastle sources were saying yesterday, you know, if it is Isak and Moltemanda, we're happy to go into the autumn and winter with that. So it did feel as if there was a dialing down of the noise yesterday, but I do still think it'll be a manic final day of the transfer window. And you know, I've just done a piece actually, which is why I'm late. You know, I think probably people thinking, well, he's late because something major is about to happen. But I've just written a piece, and you know, there is one theory that Newcastle are about to pull another rabbit out of a hat, a kind of, you know, another Voltemada, you know, at some point, because they kept that one very, very quiet. And I think that's one way that this could be resolved, that they've been working on a deal sort of that they've kept under wraps until very, very late that it gets out. And that's a big enough deal that they may need the money from Isak, and it kind of gives everybody a route out of it that's you know, that works for everybody. But, you know, again, how likely is that to happen, given that, you know, that the one deal that they did do last week was fantastic, but, you know, we know that two of their domestic targets are going to be very, very difficult to get out of their clubs in the last hours of the transfer window. So, you know, I haven't kind of told you one way or another what's going to happen there, but I'm just kind of trying to say that I still wouldn't rule it out. Absolutely wouldn't rule it out. And I wouldn't even rule out Newcastle doing other business that's not Isak related, because they have been working, I think, today quietly. I mean, I spoke to somebody in recruitment last week, and they said, look, the final weekend, it's always the eye of the storm, the Saturday and the Sunday before the games. It's then the Monday when all hell breaks loose, if you will, and people are sort of making phone calls, agents are doing things. So normally we've been used to Newcastle maybe not having too busy a sort of deadline day, but I think tomorrow will be busy, and I think there are going to be a few more twists and turns in this Isak situation. And you know, my expectation of the deal has gone up and down, and you know, based on different things. But fair enough to say, I think at this point, the Liverpool official kind of, the word from Liverpool is that the stance hasn't changed, that they would only come in for a second bid if they think there's this chance that if they believe there's an expectation that the deal will get done. And their conditions for bringing somebody in were that it would be at fair market value and would improve their squad. Well, Isak obviously would improve their squad, but do they believe that Newcastle's valuation is fair market? We're about to find out. 23 hours, we'll know the answers to this.
You're very cryptic there, Mark. Very cryptic in your
build-up
early on, which is great. But you made a point there, and you talked very specifically about the Liverpool side of things, because they have been in the last sort of 24 hours very much like sort of dampening those sort of expectations. And look, and Mark, I know you saw this. I think you retweeted it as well. But Dominic King yesterday put a tweet out with regards to that and kind of dampening those sorts of expectations. Even then responded to someone else saying, you know, he's just putting out the factual information, putting out the things that he knows. He's not telling people what they want to hear. We've also had today Sam Wallace mention about in talking about the potential of Alexander Isak staying at Newcastle United and how that might work out. Even tonight, just before it went off, I think I saw it because I think Craig Hope retweeted it, but on a slot saying after the game, it'll probably hear tonight if anything is going to happen. So it is going to come to a head at some point. It's an interesting one because like it has gone both ways. We were expecting after the game on Monday, once that game was done, there was an expectation the deal was going to get done. It hasn't. We've now 6 days on from that. 24 hours, less than that. Is that really enough time to get that deal done? And where Where are you kind of in your mindset in terms of whether it will or will not?
Yeah, I think because of the unique situation where clearly Isak wants the move so much that I don't think the practicalities of getting the deal done. So the things like wages and contracts, and look, Liverpool, and you've got to be careful because you can't accuse clubs of doing things that they might deny. But let's just put it this way: I think it would be very easy for them to get the framework of a contract and an agreement, wages and all those kind of things very, very quickly wrapped up. So it would just be between the two clubs. I think having thought on Thursday, Friday, sorry, it was more like 70-30. I'm kind of zoomed back to maybe 50-50, so I'm not really giving you an answer there. But if we're being honest, I mean, look at the reality of the situation, given the noises that were coming out of Newcastle and Liverpool yesterday, there's probably less chance of it happening now than there would have been maybe on Friday. But again, look, things can change in an instant. And if the deal is going to get done, then I think there would have maybe been some stuff happening in the background today that is so sensitive that no wonder it hasn't leaked. Obviously earlier this has become a saga because people around the deal have been leaking things, and obviously Isak himself has tweeted something on Instagram. Now, the fact that it's gone very, very quiet now is because look, anything that's leaked now that threatens the deal is counterproductive to anybody trying to get it done. So it doesn't surprise me that we haven't really heard anything today. The other problem is, I think for it to happen now, Newcastle, I think, still need that second striker. They still need another option. I think it would be absolutely, I think it would be a huge gamble and a massive mistake if they sold Isak without a second striker coming in. Because I just don't think that is possible for Newcastle to go into the second half of the season, or the first, like the autumn winter part of the season, given how many games there are, with just one striker, a guy who's coming in from the Bundesliga, played less than 80 Bundesliga games, not scored. He's had a very, very good season last year. I think he's a massive signing for Newcastle. Clearly the Isak successor long term, you can tell that. But I just don't think that works for Newcastle, because look, he could struggle. We've seen Gyökeres playing for Arsenal today, hasn't played well in 2 out of the 3 games he's had. Even Wirtz, he's kind of been hit and miss. He was pretty anonymous on Monday. We've seen Benjamin Šeško coming in and not hitting the ground running. That happens. That really, really does happen, that the players come in and they don't hit the ground running. The question for Newcastle is, are you prepared to load all your chips on your new man now, or do you have to try and get somebody in? So that's one aspect of it. I think they do need a second striker. I think Wissa's a very, very difficult deal to do. I've been pretty much plugged in on that one all the way through, and I don't think anything's necessarily changed in the last 6 weeks, if I'm being honest on that. So there we go. Strand Larsen, I think they're still trying to get, and obviously, if they go high enough, I suppose they could get that one. But there's been very much a noise from the Wolves owners is they don't want to sell him either. So those two domestic targets, I think, are very, very difficult to do. And there's a premium to pay at the end of the window. If you're trying to do a deal in the final 23 hours of a transfer window, it costs you more than it does if you do it in July. I think that's the only thing I would say is, it becomes harder. And I think Newcastle should in turn say to Liverpool, there is a premium that you have to pay on this transfer. Now, yes, maybe we would have accepted 130 million or 125 million, maybe back at the time when they put that 110 million pound bid in, if they'd have had a second striker. But we've now got three games where they've only got 2 points. So that whole pre-season and the first 2 games has been disrupted indirectly by Liverpool. Liverpool would say it wasn't us that did it, but there is a price to pay for that, in my opinion, and that is more money on the deal. So I don't think Newcastle, it would be massive questions for Newcastle United if they turn around and sold Isak for, let's say, 120 million tomorrow and don't get another striker. That is disastrous, and in my opinion, raises questions about what the strategy was there. I understand they want to get Isak out of the building in some ways. Well, they haven't said that, by the way. That's not officially, but I would think that that's something that you would try to do if you were Newcastle, because it's a toxic situation. A better situation would be to bring in a Wissa, a Strand Larsen, or even a kind of X factor name that you don't have, and sell Isak, because you get the massive amount of PSR, and you also get the problem of Isak out of the building. You don't have any issues around this circus that's built up around Isak, which it really is a circus now. And if he doesn't go, we're still going to be asking questions about it into kind of September and October. When is he coming back? Is he going to sign a contract? It's a really it's a very difficult situation. So I can understand why they would want to get rid of him from one perspective, although they've never said that. That's not been a briefing that we've ever had from Newcastle. But by the same token, if you sell him, it's not the idea of kind of getting rid of him, and it's a good thing because we've got the PSR. You have to deal with the here and now, and the here and now is that they've got they haven't made the start to the season that they wanted to make. They haven't got the second striker in yet. They've not got the first striker in that they wanted to get with the pre-season they wanted him to have as well. So there has been a massive price to Newcastle's season here. So I think if they crumble on the final day, accept 120 million and don't get in another striker, then it won't be a sort of season ender. But I think there will be big questions to ask of PIF of what they were thinking and how things go. So really interesting to see how it goes tomorrow. It'll tell us a lot about PIF. It will tell us an awful lot about PIF and where they are, because this is the first really big decision that they have had to make. So huge 23 hours it is now, or 22 and a half, isn't it now? 22 and a half hours to go.
It's ticking away.
Isn't it? Yeah. But I think if you ask me, I think even though it may not come out publicly tonight, I think we will know. It may be there will be a direction of travel by the morning. I think potentially.
I've got a question for you, but if Dan and Chris, if you've got anything you want to ask Mark on this, go for it.
Yeah, no, I'll be of the same opinion that we said it the other night or last night, that unless we see something tonight, it'd be very difficult to get everything done tomorrow, including bringing in someone ourselves. Even if we have something lined up, it's a lot to get done because it closes at 7. It's not even open till 11. I suppose maybe just one question, Mark, on how, because I'm in the keep him, sell him in the summer camp, and don't sell him to Liverpool or another Premier League club if at all possible, even if we need to take a bit of a hit. How would reintegrating him look like to you? Because that's going to be very difficult, and because it's so massive, everyone in the world knows about this situation. All eyes will be on that as well.
Well, the one thing that we know is that Eddie Howe has plotted an absolutely faultless path the whole summer. He hasn't expressly criticised Alexander Isak at any point, despite the fact that he has done something which, in my opinion, is utterly shameful, to down tools and effectively go on strike for 4 weeks, knowing that your teammates are struggling without you to score goals without you. Eddie Howe hasn't criticised him. He's left the door open for reintegration. He has never at any point said that he wouldn't. He wouldn't welcome back. He's never criticised his actions. He's very much protected him in a lot of ways, and he's also, I think, had an absolute stormer in terms of kind of plotting that line between two ways, and he's also, I don't think, been particularly directly involved with the kind of negotiations around his future. I think he's had a conversation at the start of the summer with Isak, where maybe I get the impression that Isak has obviously said what his intentions are, but I don't think Eddie has ever said you can leave or you can leave. I mean, he actually said to us at the press conference on Friday, denied that he'd ever given him any kind of assurances that he could go if we get a replacement in. So that to me is the first part of the reintegration, is that Eddie Howe's almost kept his hands clean of this. And he said it all the way through. It's not my decision. I think that's very deliberate. He's a very clever guy. And I think he's kept his hands totally and utterly clean of this. He hasn't at any point criticised Isak. He hasn't got involved in the decision. So he can almost put his arm around Isak and say, look, it's like that old thing of, this wasn't anything to do with me, really. Yes, of course, I've got a say in what goes on, but it wasn't really anything to do with me. all I can do is sit and say, look, this is what's happened. We have to deal with it now. Do you want to play, or do you not want to play, or what do you want to do? So I think that's the first part of it. The second part of it is coming to an agreement on a new contract with a set release clause. That for me would be a massive pay increase for Isak, and a release clause that works for both parties and basically sets out to Liverpool, this is how much you're going to have to pay, which is probably nearer the 110 mark than it is his wages.
Just on that, because that was sort of bandied around quite early on in these sort of just maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago about the contract extension, and then the additional sort of release clause you're allowed to go next summer. You know, how do you think that might go down with the fans if that happens? Because obviously it's almost it kind of feels like if it happens that he's treated the club, the players, the fan, the manager like this, and then almost being rewarded for it. And I kind of know why it's happening, but do you think that move is something that might need to wait a little bit until he's back in and regularly playing, or can that be done straight away? Because I'm not sure how well that will go down.
Yeah, I think you're right. It couldn't be day one. Here's your new contract. Here's your massive wage increase for Downing Tools for 4 weeks, and you can leave for 110, or you can leave for 100 million in January. You know, because it would. You know, the thing about release clause, I did a story about it earlier in the summer actually. That was fascinating. I got chatting to a lawyer who drafts up a lot of contracts, footballers' contracts. And he was talking about, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can set up a release clause. You can make it for specific clubs. You can make it for specific time periods. You can sort of, you know, you can almost tier it where some clubs pay this, some clubs pay that. So there's a lot of work that has to go on a release clause. So it wouldn't just be a case of, you know, 110 million here. You know, anybody can trigger at any time. So, you know, it may be that for Premier League clubs it would be different from what it would be for European clubs or something like that. Look, football is a game that people, you know, the Instagram posts that are emotional and all this stuff. Football is a game that deals in the here and now and the practicals. Look, he is a very good player, and Newcastle need goals from a very good player, and all of the other stuff is stuff that you can deal with at another point. If you can get him on the training pitch, you can get him re-engaged, and I think that is possibly easier said than, you know, at this point it doesn't feel likely, but in the middle of September when Barcelona come to St James's Park, and then Arsenal play the week after, and then there's a trip to Brussels, there's a trip to Marseille. Like, look, you are sitting on the sideline while your football team is playing in the biggest competition in Europe, and you aren't involved, and you are deciding not to play for 4 months or whatever it is. I just don't think that's realistic. I think that was something that was thrown into the air as a kind of like a leverage thing to make it very clear that he wasn't going to play at this point. Obviously, we know that Jamie Rubin and people from PIF went to see him on Monday, and they got short shrift from Isak, which doesn't surprise me because, you know, look, he was never going to withdraw that threat at this point, knowing that Liverpool was still interested. It would make no sense. He'd have burnt all the bridges and kind of effectively sort of turned around and said to Liverpool that I'm not going to come. And obviously we know as it stands right now that Liverpool are still interested. There's obviously still an element of optimism from somebody somewhere that something could happen. So if he felt that way last week, which I'm sure he did, because we all expected that things would have been moving by this point last week anyway. So he was never going to come back into the fray, I think, for Leeds. And, you know, potentially wouldn't even been fit, wouldn't even been in the right frame of mind to play against Leeds anyway. So I think that was never going to happen there. But reintegration, yeah, it could happen. You know, I know from speaking to other directors of football who've dealt with similar things in the past that the impression there is, look, every single situation can be rebuilt. And let's not forget, Virgil van Dijk, Liverpool came in for him when he was at Southampton. He didn't play for a game, I think. He didn't go on strike like this, but he didn't play for a game. And they ended up coming back in January for him. But he did play 4.5 months of football for them in between. People will forget, and his teammates, I think they're probably pissed off with him. To be honest, they're probably annoyed with him, but they know that they're a better team with him playing. And a lot of them in there, let's be perfectly honest, as much as they've done brilliantly for Newcastle, some of them may also feel that, like, look, I can kind of understand where he's coming from, because if Liverpool came in for me, I'd probably want to go. As much as we don't want that to be the case, as people who care deeply for Newcastle United and realise what a massive club it is and the journey that it's going on, but it is also a club that hasn't at this point in time got anything like a foothold in the major competitions that Liverpool have. So we have to kind of accept that I don't think it will be that difficult to for the players to kind of understand where he's coming from. But I think it could be done. I think things will have to be said, things will have to be done, and it may be that Newcastle, there will be statements and things put out if that happens. And how likely is Isak to kind of to kind of fold? We'll see. But let's put it this way: his agent, if things don't happen now, his agent has an interest in getting him a new contract because he gets a cut of that. So maybe the advice is to him in the interim, because 4.5 months, 5 months is a long way to go. Liverpool could be in a very different position in January. I think he'd be better off. I always thought at the start of it, he would have been better off waiting until next January, because there's Barcelona, Bayern Munich need frontline strikers as well. Chelsea will probably be, I think Arsenal, given the start that their new man's made, will probably be in the market for a striker as well. So there'll be more options for him next summer. It won't be like, or maybe, who knows, he might decide to sign that new contract and stay at Newcastle, because we all thought Bruno was going to leave. And when he signed that new contract with the release clause, but he didn't, it didn't happen. I think, look, the picture will be very different on September the 2nd. If he stays, the pitch will, his options are totally and utterly different. And does he really want to spend 4.5 months sitting, training, one-on-one training at Benton for 4.5 months? The long nights drawing, it gets cold out there. Your teammates are playing in the Champions League. Potentially, your new man might be smashing goals in. You're easily forgotten in this world, and this saga has dominated everything for 4 months. But I'll tell you what, it will not dominate this. It will not dominate into kind of October, November if nothing changes. Yes, it will still be a big story. Of course, it will, but he won't be the obsession that Liverpool fans maybe see him as now. It won't be the same level of kind of frenzy around him if they get to kind of October, November, because things move on. So he will have to play. I think he will play. And things will look very different on September the 2nd. But by the same token, obviously he'll be sitting there tonight thinking, well, I'm going to hold out because I might still get my move. I might still get my 140 million move to Liverpool. So I understand why he didn't change his mind last week. I don't agree with that. I think it's disgraceful what he's done. And it's soured that legacy forever. I don't think he'll ever be a hero to Newcastle United fans. And he'll never be somebody that I feel the same way about, and there'll be an asterisk next to him. Whatever happens now, I think that's really, disappointing as well that we're in that situation. But he can maybe salvage something if he comes back in, scores some goals, and and plays on. I think it will be a different feel if he then leaves after that, if he gets his boots back on. But I think he's forsaken, hasn't he? He'll never be a Bruno. Let's put it that way. I think Bruno's always going to be kind of like his place in the history of Newcastle United. He is going to be remembered as a hero of Newcastle United. Whatever happens, he'll be the first captain who's lifted silverware. He'll also be the guy who got on with it when his move last summer that he thought was going to happen didn't happen. He just got on with it and gave his all, and is fully committed. And I can't wait to start talking about players like him rather than Isak at the moment, to be honest, because it has been dominated, and it's been disappointing, hasn't it? And I feel like one of my fellow journalists said he's ruined our summer. And I don't know whether he's ruined our summer in a lot of ways, because there's been a lot of, we've been able to write a lot. It hasn't been difficult to find a story this summer. Let's put it that way. Sometimes you can feel it's a bit difficult to. I remember the Steve Bruce days when it was difficult to find a transfer. What's going to happen? And they're trying to bring in players on loan, and that wasn't happening. It's not been like that this summer. But it's not the story that you want to write, is it? You wanted to write players coming in and Isak's signing a new contract. It hasn't been that way. And it's kept us on our toes, and will keep us on our toes for the next. I don't need to keep repeating how many hours. You can tell what I'm thinking. Of 23 hours.
Yeah. I know we've not got much time with you, Mark. I've just seen your message, so we might have to let you go soon. But Chris, I know I think you might have something to ask him, so jump in, and then a few quick fire things to ask you before we let you go, Mark.
Cheers, thank you, Pete. No, it was only a quick one, Mark. Because for me, I agree with what you said, by the way, about Alexander Isak's stance. Like, he's gone this long. So, when apparently they had a meeting with the owners and he didn't want to change his mind, like, to me, that was no shock. Because if you've done this long and you've only got at the time, it was like a week to go. It's like now, he's got less than 24 hours to go. So you may as well hang on in there, because he's done it for this long. He may as well continue with that stance to see if he can force a move through. But what I wanted to ask you, Mark, was, do you think the links to other striker targets will be significant for Newcastle tomorrow? And the reason I ask you that is, we're hearing a lot of noise that Liverpool aren't going to come in with another bid. And for me, and the boys as well, we've spoke about this offline, online. I think it would be mad for Newcastle to bring in another striker and keep Alexander Isak. Like, we'd then have 3 strikers plus William Asula, who some people will argue isn't an out-and-out striker, but that's another conversation. But do you think, if we see Newcastle go in with another, like we heard Ben Jacobs say today, Newcastle went in with a bid earlier this week for Visser, and that may have been the case, but obviously we didn't confirm Voltemade until Thursday. So that news may well have happened earlier on in the week, and then we went to Voltemade. But the reason I'm asking is, what do you see the chances are of Newcastle letting Alexander Isak go if a sufficient bid comes in and not replacing him? And do you think that there has to be another striker coming in before Newcastle even consider? That's what we've heard all summer. Newcastle need 2 strikers before Alexander Isak leaves. However, if it gets to 2-3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and Liverpool go, here's 140 million, for example, do Newcastle go, oh, we haven't got our striker? Or do Newcastle go, thank you very much, we'll take that and we'll worry about it in January? Like, how do you see it?
I think that, look, it will. I think it will depend on how close Newcastle are to getting another striker in. I don't believe, given the noises around things, that it would be that they believe that they've got enough with Voltemade and Asula. Look, he didn't. Let's be perfectly honest. Eddie Howe has resisted playing Asula in the Premier League until the point at which yesterday he had no other option. He doesn't have another striker available yesterday, and played Asula. And I don't think Asula probably did enough to suggest that he would be able to play that role for a period of time. Because look, the problem is, if this was last season, when they only had Premier League games and League Cup games in the run-up to January, it is a different story when you have, what is it, 4? Is it 4? Is it 6? It's 6 actually Champions League games, isn't it, before January? We know what happened last time Newcastle played in the Champions League. Callum Wilson got injured early in the season, so they went into those games with only Isak, who, let's not forget, himself has had injury problems, with hamstring problems in the past. He's never gone through a season without any problems at all either. So I don't believe that anybody on the football side of things at Newcastle will be happy to go in with one striker, or one striker and Asula and potentially Anthony Gordon, because it disrupts and I think massively weakens Newcastle as an attacking force. Yes, they would have Voltemade, but again, he could get injured. He's never played a British or an English, winter period. He's never played games in the kind of like to the point at which Newcastle will have to play in the next few months as well. And it's a more physical game. It's a faster game. So I don't personally think that that's an ideal situation. The only caveat I'd have on that is we don't yet know where PIF are. We know now at Newcastle, I think it's been a total and utter misunderstanding of PIF all the way through their ownership, that they're kind of emotional and it's all about sort of showing Saudi in the best light. I don't think that. I think it is a business decision, this. So there is maybe the point at which if Liverpool go to the point of, you said 140 million, if they go to that point, or if they go to a high enough valuation, do PIF turn around and say, look, as a business, this makes sense. It gives us this, it gives us that. It allows us to kind of reinvigorate. I mean, I did a piece about the PSR impact of selling him, and it's huge, absolutely huge. It gives Newcastle 2-3 windows of being able to restructure the team. And that does work for me if the second striker comes in and is a ready-made plug and play replacement for Isak. So Wissa would make sense. Wissa would make perfect sense. I understand why they've gone for him. I understand why they've gone high for him as well, because it makes sense. He's 29. He knows the game. He scored more Premier League goals last season than anybody who wasn't taking penalties. He is a great replacement, but that deal doesn't look like it's going to happen. I know Brentford are digging their heels in. So I think, yeah, you're totally right that we have to look at who they're being linked with. If they bring in another striker, Isak goes, in my opinion. There's no doubt about that in my mind. They wouldn't go in with 3 strikers. It just doesn't happen. And I think if they're likely to bring in a third striker, if they're likely to bring in the second striker, which I think by this point they will kind of know where things are going, I think that's when the back channel communication starts to Liverpool, or maybe through third parties, maybe intermediaries, to say, we've got our second striker. Can we start to talk about we think we've got that lined up? Can we start to talk about what kind of figures we're looking at for Isak? And that's when all the kind of the whole chain begins. And as I said, because it's so delicate, because there's so few people that would know that at this point, and maybe those who do know it don't want to ruin the bid. I mean, I've been in positions before where, and I'm not in this position right now, I'd say, but I've been in positions before where a wind of a transfer and a really good contact I've gone to them and said, look, is this the case? Because I've been told this. A very good contact at a club has told me that is correct. But if you write that, it could potentially sink the deal. So don't write it now. And because that's a really good contact, you do sit on it. And sometimes that means you miss out on an exclusive. And I don't know. There could be people in that situation. I've got to say, like, I am not in that situation right now. I'm not going to turn around on Monday, and you won't look at me and go, oh, he was holding out on us. I'm not in that situation right now. But that's where we are right now. So it could be that, if there have been some situations where Newcastle do feel that they're in the mood, they've got a second striker who is of sufficient quality to bring in, then it could be that that those back channel kind of discussions are taking place, because that's how the transfer window works. But if the sort of quietness of the whole situation right now is reflective of the fact that nothing's happening, this deal won't get done. It won't happen. It won't happen in 23 hours. It won't just sort of come out of nowhere, in my opinion. But you have to, like, as a journalist at this point, you have to be very much kind of aware of the fact that, like, I think I wrote a piece last week saying, I remember being briefed very strongly about the day before Andy Carroll left for Liverpool that move was not happening, directly from the club, and then getting an apologetic text message the next day when indeed that deal did happen, because Liverpool went to the point where Newcastle couldn't believe they were going to go, and he ended up signing. So you just kind of, experience tells you, I've been doing this for a long time, and kind of been doing it in Newcastle for 17 years now, and experience tells you that you as much as you kind of like to come on a podcast and say, or on a live stream and say definitively what's going to happen, I think it's foolish to kind of do that at this stage, because you just don't know. Things can change really quickly, and I know that a lot of the guys up here and me as well have been talking to people who kind of like are very central to a lot of these deals that are happening. We are speaking to people like really tuned into it, but even some of them can't really tell us exactly what's going to happen. So yeah, it is one of them. I think there's some really, really good journalists working on this story, and the fact that nothing's coming out today is kind of, tells you probably about how secretive things are right now, and maybe, that either how secretive things are or the fact that there's nothing going on. But all I can say is that the noises yesterday, as I said, from Liverpool, and actually like from Liverpool pretty much the whole way through, they haven't spoken about it, officially. They've kind of, the briefing hasn't come from them as a football club. They haven't briefed on it. That's all I can say, because I do deal with Liverpool a little bit as well. So, whatever's happened behind the scenes, which I can't really verify exactly what's happened behind the scenes, but whatever's been happening publicly, they aren't briefing to try and unsettle, and their message has been pretty clear from the start that their stance is that we will only come in with a second bid if we feel there's a chance of happening. We won't come in with a second bid for it to be rejected and this not to happen. So from that perspective, maybe it's not a surprise that a second bid hasn't come in yet, because maybe they are waiting for the pieces to fall into to fall into place, if you will, and then they will they will put a bid in, and then something will happen. But it's there's a lot of kind of things I think still to happen, and I think it's kind of like it will keep us all watching, and will keep me on the phone tomorrow, keep my WhatsApps kind of glowing, I think, tomorrow as well, and I'm sure we'll all be in the same situation. But I'll kind of be glad, I think, when it's all over at 7 o'clock, and I think Eddie Howe absolutely will be.
I've got three
real drink then
to share with you, or to ask you for quick responses, Mark, because I know you need to shoot. Just very quickly, really, really good pieces. If you haven't checked them out from Mark, there was this one that was wrote the other day about the shift in message with regards to Eddie Howe on Alexander Isak. This was the one you were talking about, which refers to the silver bullet, and the PSR discussion within that, in how it could impact Alexander Isak's deal. So definitely go and have a read of that, people. Really, really good piece, and it tells you the potential of what we could spend with Alexander Isak's money being generated. Few things really quickly. Do you think, in your opinion, that Newcastle United are in a position of strength at this point with regards to Alexander Isak? Now we've got Nick Voltemade in the club. There's lots of arguments to say that Liverpool hold the cards here, that Newcastle hold the cards here. Where do you sit in that? Where do you think it is?
Newcastle hold the cards because they can turn down the bid, and so I do think that they're still in the position of strength from that perspective, because they can turn down the bid and have already turned one bid down. And we can talk about Walter Marder all we want, but they have been trying, and this is one of the things that has been most difficult on social media, if you ever kind of venture in there with Liverpool fans, is you kind of keep saying that they've been trying to replace Callum Wilson all summer. They've done it they've tried to go out and get a lot of really good players to replace Callum Wilson, and it's been like banging your head against a brick wall sometimes, because you're kind of trying to say to Liverpool fans who obviously aren't aware of the dynamics of Newcastle's season last season, it's that, like, yes, Callum Wilson, they've been looking at it and saying, well, Callum Wilson didn't really do anything last season, so what are you talking about? Why would you spend 65 million on a Callum Wilson replacement? Well, it's nuanced, isn't it? Newcastle are wanted to bring in a Callum Wilson replacement, but obviously their idea was to bring in a Callum Wilson replacement who would eventually be Isak's successor. So João Pedro, Liam Delap, Hugo Ekitike, and now obviously Nick Voltemade. But they've had to pivot with Voltemade to an Isak successor, because it's clear that whether Isak stays for 4 months or 8 months or whatever, his time at Newcastle we are now running down the clock on his time at Newcastle. He will not stay. This is not a 10-year project for Alexander Isak, whatever happens now. So they've had to do that. They've had to go and do that business. So I think Voltemade gives them some, it relieves the pressure on them to reintegrate Isak, and it also relieves the pressure on them to bring somebody else in. But I don't think it necessarily, I think it unlocked things. I think we all thought it unlocked things Thursday night and Friday, because the shift in tone, which I mentioned on Friday, was very clear. It went from he's not for sale at any price to he's not necessarily going to go, which is definitely it's a different tone, and it was one of the three conditions that they needed to tick off to get there. And I think they have been working on a second striker, trying to bring in another striker. So it's not as if, I think that they totally shut everything off with regards to selling him on after signing Walter Marno. It's not as if that was their decision at that point. I think there's still a great deal of uncertainty there what their next move is going to be. So I don't think they necessarily made a decision on Friday about what they were going to do. But I think they hold the cards. I think they can, it was said to me a long time ago that, because I was chatting to somebody, I think back in February, March, and said, look, if Isak decides he wants to go, they're going to have to sell him, aren't they? And the guy said to me, no, they don't have to sell him. And ironically, that's been the same stance from Brentford with Wissa, because they've gone, everybody thought on July the 28th, including some people up here, thought on July the 28th, look, this is a stance, but they will kind of like that stance will change and shift given the kind of money that Newcastle are putting up for Wissa and the fact that he isn't going to play for them for the first 3 games. But they haven't buckled. Wolves haven't buckled with Strand Larsen so far. Why should Newcastle buckle? That's my opinion. Why should Newcastle buckle? Why should Newcastle turn around and say, well, Isak, he's put that Instagram statement out and he's made it difficult for us. So let's just get rid of him from him.
I'm so glad you said that, Mark, because we've been asking that question for the last 6 weeks. Yeah. Is that why is it that everyone's saying when the Wissa bid was rejected or the Strand Larsen bid was rejected, good on Brentford, good on Wolves for holding on to their guy, but when it comes to Isak, it's like, why are they not releasing Isak? Why are they not just take the 110 million? It doesn't work like that. It should be all seen in the same light. But it's nice to hear somebody else reiterate what we've been saying, because we agree with you, Mark. You're absolutely right on that point. Last thing from me, because I know what you're going to shoot. Obviously, some big games were announced, and Nick Bolton made a completely just overshadowed almost the draw on Thursday with regards
brilliant. It's a sight for sore eyes, isn't it? The fixture list. Look at that. Champions League is absolutely brilliant.
So just your quick thoughts on that. But of course, there's an even bigger game, Mark, that's coming up. An even bigger game for us all. This one here, round 3, Carabao Cup, Bradford City at St James's Park. I know you've got a vested interest on that one. So just quick thoughts on the Champions League, but also the big one.
So the Champions League draw, great draw. Slightly gutted the away fixtures aren't switched with the home fixtures, because some great games would have been there. I mean, you're going to Lisbon, Barcelona, Bilbao. Those would have been great trips. Whereas I think some of the away trips are fine. They're good. They're good trips. I mean, they're some really interesting games. But they're not quite as romantic as going to Barcelona and the Stadium of Light in Lisbon and potentially Bilbao, which would been absolutely sensational as well. But look, it's a difficult draw actually when you boil it down. I think probably one of the more difficult draws of the English teams, because the home games, Barcelona is a tough one to start with, although I think probably a good one to start with and a good one that you start at home. And I think it's by far probably the most difficult of the opening games. But there's some difficult matches in there against teams that have played at this level consistently for years. And even Saint-Gilloise are a good team, really good team who've played at a high level and did well in the Champions League last year as well, and have done well in Europe, in recent years as well. So it's not as if you are, there's not really any easy games there. I don't see any games there that are like a gimme, to be perfectly honest. I don't see anything in there where you think, well, we'll be overwhelming favourites for this game. So it's a tough one, but obviously there are more opportunities to get in there. You only have to finish in the top 16, don't you? Or the top 32, sorry, because obviously you get into the playoff bracket as well. So I think they've got to aim for that minimum, and I think they can get there. But again, a lot depends on what happens in the next day or so in terms of what their striker options look like, because we've seen in the last 3 games they're very, very good until they get into the final third. And if they can get a striker in, or they can get to, if they can reintegrate Isak, then I would feel a lot more confident that they will get through that first phase in Europe. But try and get something out of Barcelona, get yourself to Brussels for the second game, and be in a position where you feel like you've got a chance there. And then Benfica at home, I think another magical night, isn't it? That's two like some of the home games are absolutely fantastic, really. Barcelona first up is the stuff of dreams. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. But like you said, it's really just a warm up for the League Cup game the week after, really. And potentially,
Isaac hat-trick.
Phantoms. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, fantastic. I mean, the way we're playing at the moment, actually, it's I think if you'd have said this to me last season, we'd have drawn Newcastle in the Cup away from home, I would have kind of said, that's going to be a cricket score. And I don't think, I still think we're not going to win the game, I don't think. But it might have been different if it was a Valley Parade, having a bit of a go at a Newcastle team that you would think would have a lot of changes in it. It might be very much a second string team, given that they've got the 2 Champions League games either side of it. But yeah, I can't wait. I mean, I was to draw them in the 3rd round. I mean, you think if we'd have got an easy round and get into the 4th round when there's kind of not as many teams in there, but to draw them in the 3rd round, given it was the final fixture that came out of the European teams, and I knew the ball number that we were as Newcastle came out in the 4, I was like, that can't be us. But a few people have asked me, actually, there's a question at the bottom there, isn't there, about whether I'm going to be a fan or work it in the press box. But unfortunately, we, obviously it's not one of these we're not one of these clubs that have kind of 4,000 season tickets and we get 6,000 tickets for the game. So 2,000 people who don't have season tickets can get a ticket. I mean, we've got 16,000 season tickets. So I think it's going to be difficult for me to get a ticket. I can try. I know my dad and my brothers have season tickets. So if they can get me a ticket for the away end, I'll have a decision to make. But I think it's probably going to be in the press box at the moment. And I was getting a bit of stick from the press team at Newcastle and some of the other guys about what I'll be like that night. But yeah, magical night. Can't wait. I mean, the fixtures coming up are just absolutely brilliant. But that one for me is a bit special. Really is a bit special. And I don't think since we were in the Premier League we've played Newcastle in a competitive fixture. We played a friendly game under Rafa, but we've not played in a competitive fixture. But I do distinctly remember coming up for an FA Cup game the year we got promoted, and Alan Shearer scored. I think it was like a routine kind of 2-0 for Newcastle. And I sat up in level 7, and I remember it was a corner, I think, or something, and it was like, I think Alan Shearer roughed up Andy O'Brien actually at the corner with it. It was like, and he scored, and it looked like a foul. I just remember it distinctly well. And then walking across Leeds Park and being surrounded by all these kind of black and white shirts and thinking, yeah, well, here we go. But it was great, but we just didn't really turn up that day. But yeah, who knows? I mean, we had. I'm trying to think. Like Cambridge obviously came up and did pretty well. AFC Wimbledon held their own, didn't they? And obviously we had who was it in the FA Cup? I'm trying to remember. It was last year who scored first. Andy Woodman's team. Goodness me.
Bromley.
Bromley, that was it. I was going to say Sutton, but it's not Sutton. It was Bromley. Bromley came up, held their own, didn't they? Scored that absolute wonder goal. So, if there's a moment like that, but yeah, I can understand. Like, I think Newcastle are going to take the cup seriously, aren't they? So it's going to be a tough ask for us. But yeah, magic night. Can't wait. Yeah. 2 weeks. It's going to be Barcelona 1 week, and then Bradford the week after. Like that is a heck of a 7 days. And I think the week after that they're in Brussels. So absolutely stupendous. There's Arsenal in between as well.
I think there is. Yeah.
Mark, I have three yes/no questions for you. New CEO David Hopkins.
I believe so. Yes, and soon.
New sporting director Ross Wilson.
Not 100% on that one. Not 100%. There's been, it's not. Yeah, I mean, I think he's still the favoured name, but there may be some things still to work out on that one, I think. But not heard any other names as it stands. But I think that one may be a little bit further away, actually, from being appointed, is my sense. I think definitely CEO very close. DOF not necessarily quite so close.
Last one. New stadium announcement soon?
No. I don't think it is. I think we're still a little way away. on that one. Believe it or not, I'm I've actually got a piece to write in a few weeks. Well, hopefully maybe in the international break about the stadium. So I'm just doing a bit of research and trying to find out a little bit on that. But it doesn't feel imminent. Which we can get back to talking about that, can't we? The training ground and the lack of sponsors at the training ground as well, which were the three kind of first topics.
The usual stuff.
Invaded.
And Mark, I've just got one very quick, and again, just a yes, no for you, just before you choose. Is Isak going to be wearing red or black and white come Tuesday?
That's a really,
in your opinion. Obviously, your opinion.
Yeah, my opinion. I'd say at this stage, with no firm indication yet that Newcastle have a second striker on board, and with Liverpool kind of making the noises that they're making, I would say at this point at 9 o'clock on Sunday, I'd say you'd be more likely to be wearing black and white, but I wouldn't rule anything out. And by the way, on Friday, I did a podcast with Liverpool where I said I thought he was going to probably sign for Liverpool. So, that's not me kind of shit. I'm not somebody who changes my mind like that quickly usually, but it's the nature of this saga, I think, has kind of made it difficult for us all a little bit. But I'm kind of still, I'm still. I think both possibilities are still eminently possible. I think it's fair to say, and I feel like I'll be able to kind of get to the point. I think of tomorrow. We'll know tomorrow. I don't think it's not going to go to 7 o'clock. Look, the direction of travel. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not going to happen. It wouldn't 100% surprise me if Liverpool get a message out or Newcastle get a message out fairly early on if they know that it's not going to happen, potentially from the Liverpool end. So it may be that if it's dragging into kind of very late in the day, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but it may be that it's dragging late into the day. Nobody wants to kind of put a lid on it by that point. It may be that there's still something going on. So that's why I kind of feel at this point, like, even though there's been no news today, don't think that means nothing's happening. It just means that there's no sort of definitive kind of way. And I think if it does, but I think they will know behind the scenes. Like I think Arne Slot said, I think he put the quote up to me saying, "I'll know tonight." And I think that, I think they will know tonight. But maybe we will know possibly a little bit earlier than the deadline. I don't think it's going to go to 7 o'clock, but if for Sky, I suppose they'll hope that it goes as late as it can, so they can kind of keep people watching and stuff. And probably for us as well, because we'll have a live blog running, and so will all the other newspapers. So I think we'll be kind of hoping that there's some drama. But funny enough, like it may not be Isak for Newcastle. It may be something else. Like obviously they potentially, I think, there's loads of stuff they could still do. I just said, I can't stay on all night, but like. I think Miley kind of needs a loan potentially, but that's not going to happen now. But and somebody more senior coming in, and they're still a little bit light in one or two areas. But I think they could probably do with a midfielder, to be honest with you, given the number of games that are coming in. But I don't think that's necessarily going to happen now. But Eddie did say he wanted one more in, so they are working on things. And it may be that Isak doesn't happen, but something else does.
Yeah.
Yeah, the couple of people in the chat put Davide Bertese, I know, was linked. But, that would be a great option. But I'm not going to pressure on that because I know you've got to go. So apologies for the last few questions because I do know you've got to shoot. But absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time, Mark. Make sure that everyone follows Mark on X, follows everything tomorrow. Of course, part of the iPaper. And hopefully we get to speak to you again soon, Mark. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Sorry for being late.
No,
no hassle. Thanks for taking the time.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
Great to have Mark on. Hopefully everyone in the chat enjoyed the conversation. I've had a few messages already to say it's a really, really good conversation with Mark. Always a good chat, and nice to have him back with us and give us a little bit of an update with regards to certain situations and the potential that there could be things behind the scenes and things working potentially from a Newcastle perspective. Let's wait and see on that. But good chat. Anything from the chat? Anything stored? Any comments, questions, super chats?
Yeah, there's been a couple of things, mate. I'll go with the, excuse me, in the normal vein. I will go with the super chat. Chegmeister, thank you very much, mate, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Chegmeister asks us, does it concern you that we haven't won in 11 games, including the pre-season? How optimistic are you for the season? And Chegmeister thinks that we need a number 10. Do you agree with him? Daz, go with you first.
Bit of a concern, but there's reasons for all that, and it's one major reason the whole Isaac situation and not having a recognised striker. And I suppose I'd be more worried if we hadn't scored. We did score against Liverpool twice, but no. I think now we're still going to be missing Gordon for 2 games. He still has two games definitely suspension, and Walter Maid has to make his debut, and he'll be eased into it as well. But yeah, no, it doesn't concern me. I think we'll kick on after the international break. We'll kick on, and we have to against Wolves at home. We're home. We have Wolves at home, so I think it's do or die in that one. We have to win that game.
And what about you, Pete? Are you concerned that it's been 11 games, including pre-season, that we haven't won a game? And are you still optimistic, for the season?
Yeah, I'm not looking into last season. Last season was last season. You look at pre-season. Friendlies don't necessarily mean anything. I'm focused on the games that I'm seeing right now. In this season, and the first 2 filled me with confidence that we're going in the right direction. We might not have the points on the board right now, but as I said last night, that first section, those first 3 set of fixtures are gone now. We work to the next section after the international break. We'll have the players in that we want and we need to take us forward. I think the points will come. I'm not worried. I think Wolves is a good fixture for us at St James's Park after the international break, in a great way to really properly kick off the season, knowing and having clarity of where we sit with Alexander Isak, with a second striker, with our squad and where we are. We'd have had the international break for players to have a rest, for some players to go off and get their heads right, maybe. And then we can properly kick on to next season. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, like you boys, I try and look at the 3 games in isolation. And, even if you'd have said to me at the start of the season, you're going to get a point away at Villa, you're going to lose to Liverpool at home, and you're going to get a point away to Leeds. I don't actually think that's a horrendous start. I mean, I've had my red and blue mates totally enjoying it, because obviously Everton have made a decent start. Liverpool have made a flawless start. So they're talking about gaps and everything, and top 5s out the window and all this shenanigans. But when you actually look at it, they're 3 pretty difficult games. I don't think many teams will go to Ellen Road this season and pick up maximum points. I really, really don't. I think Leeds are a difficult proposition at home. So I don't actually think that will be a bad point. Yes, Villa are in very good form, as we've seen tonight from Crystal Palace, but I don't think we've had any howlers, and if we had a number 9, perhaps the results would have been different. So that's obviously something else to consider. So yeah, I am still confident going into the season. I think we can turn it around and certainly start picking up results. And I think that Wolves game at home after the international break is going to be a big one. Let's see. As you can probably tell, there's a certain person who's in a lot of these questions, which as this person has been for the majority of the summer. Let me see. What can I ask you boys now? Yeah, it kind of follows on from what we were talking to Mark about then. But I want obviously your opinion, boys. So Pete, in your mind, DXLE Newcastle asks, what time tomorrow is realistically the cut-off point to get the deal done? And I'm assuming he's referring to Alexander Isak. What, in your mind, let's say we don't hear anything in the morning, at what point in the day are you going to go, right, this is done in your own mind?
2 p.m.
2 p.m.
The reason why I'm saying that is that there's got to be documents shared, there's got to be a medical. So there's got to be they've got to be within a position where they can travel to Liverpool to do all that sort of stuff. And that's on the basis where we know where Alexander Isak is. For all we know, he's already travelled to Sweden, he's in there, and he's there. Maybe he does the medical with the Swedish squad. That happens sometimes. They do medical and internationals. I remember Bruno doing it over in Brazil, I think, when he signed for Newcastle. So, yeah, I think around sort of 2:00 to make sure that everything's done for 7. So, yeah, it still gives a little bit more time, I think. But if we don't hear any news by midday that there's even been a bid or anything like that, then I don't see it happening. Because look, I'll be honest with you, we're nearly 9:15 tonight. I expected to hear something after the Liverpool game. I expected there to be some form of breaking news now, and it could well happen between now and midnight, but it doesn't seem like it. And Mark said tonight, the noises are not as loud as they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago. They're a lot quieter now, and you would never have expected that with less than 24 hours to go. So that's where I'm at.
What about you, Daz? And also, I'm going to add a little bit to this. So obviously, we've seen. Well, if you saw the Liverpool game earlier, Ibrahim Konate got an injury, and apparently Mark Gay scored this evening, and we know how difficult Steve Parish is to deal with. Will Liverpool have eyes fully focused on the Mark Gay deal, or do you believe that they can get both deals done?
They should be. That's what they need. And unless Mark Gay would go through away a phone and kiss the badge, I imagine that was going to happen, and that Mark Gay is going to go to Liverpool. On Isak, I wouldn't put it past Isak and his agent to be pretty much close to your house in a car, sleeping in the car tonight, ready to go rock if a bid was to go in. But realistically, in around the same time as Pete has said there, because my more concerned about like Newcastle having their obviously we would have to have a striker lined up. And we know how slow we are to get things done. And I know once a transfer, the paperwork is in, that they give them a little bit of time past the 7:00 to get things fully sorted. But I think, you're talking around 2:00. If we don't hear anything solid by then, it's a no-go. It's over. It's done. It's pretty much slammed shut then for us, incomes and outgoes. Maybe loans might get sorted, but nothing major like a cash transfer.
No, I'm a bit like you boys. I'm actually going to be keeping one eye tomorrow on incomings. I think incomings are going to be key. You heard me ask Mark earlier about potential incomings and what the implications would be, because I just don't see Newcastle signing a second striker and keeping hold of Alexander Isak. That to me means it's on. It's very much on. And if we don't hear any news of a striker incoming, to me, it's very much off, because I think Newcastle would look weak if we were to accept a deal late on for Alexander Isak and there's no Alexander Isak replacement, and we just go with Nick Voltemade and Will Asula till January. I don't think that looks good on the club. So if Newcastle are pushing, whether it be tonight, whether it be tomorrow, for the Visser, for the Larson, whoever it may be, or another striker comes in from the left wing who we're just not expecting, then I would start to think, right, this Alexander Isak deal is happening. So for me, I'm very much looking at the links incoming tomorrow. And maybe
just on Mark's hypothesis there, pretty much at the start when he came on, was he kind of indicating that it's going to be very difficult to get Wisa or Larson? Because I thought if Isak was to go, Larson's the one we'd bring in. We'd just pay that bit extra to get him in. But it sounded like he had another theory that it could be a surprise, maybe outside the Premier League, if that was to happen. So that was interesting.
Could be. It could be. And sorry, go on, Pete. Go on, mate.
No, Karen.
Oh no, go on, mate. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that's kind of where I'm at in terms of this. Like, I don't see a world in which Larson or Wisa end up at Newcastle unless there's a huge change of mind, and we didn't quite get to it because we just kind of moved on quite quickly with a lot of the conversations, which is absolutely fine. But there was this that Mark actually put out today, saying from his understanding, despite Wisa's bombshell statement, Brentford's stance that still hasn't changed. And so even though he put that statement out, it felt like Alexander Isak's last great hope with his statement. It felt like that today with Johan Wiese. It was like his last plea to allow him to leave. But from what Mark was saying, like Brentford haven't changed, and it's really weird. Like I was just looking here, and to be fair, someone in our Mags Down South chat mentioned this the other day. He mentioned it in passing, but Antonio Mango's put it out tonight. Brentford had a bid rejected for Maximilian Bier at Dortmund, and it's like he's a top young striker. He's a good striker, very good striker, that could be honed and like developed. It's like I think Antonio Mango is absolutely spot on. It's like if he wasn't keen on going to Brentford, he'd definitely come to Newcastle, Champions League football. What I'm trying to say is, could it be a player like that? Could it be a player that's in the position to move, is kind of maneuvered to move? Because I think if he was interested in that move to Brentford, I think that deal probably would have got further down the line than it did. One big got rejected. Brentford don't look like they're going back in now because he's not keen on going to Brentford. But I think if there was anglings for a player of his caliber that Newcastle is seriously interested, I think he might be interested. And I do believe that if we are going to get a second striker, I don't believe we're going to get it from England. I think we have to go abroad to get it. And maybe Eddie Howe doesn't want to do that because he wants British or players that play in England or Britain, whatever. But I think that's what we've said it all summer. We need to shop in Europe. So that was just one example. I thought Antonio Mango putting that out. I thought, yeah, absolutely, it'd be great. It'd be a great signing for it. But someone like that, I think, is the only way I see Alexander Isak being sold.
You're right. That's where you get your value from, isn't it? Because was the fee agreed something in the region of 45 to 50 million euros?
45.
45 was rejected.
Right.
45 was the bid that was rejected, so it obviously take a little bit more. So it's a relatively high fee. We'd probably have to go to around the 50 mark to get Maximilian Bear is just an example. But someone like that who was in a position to move, could move, but maybe didn't have the interest or the caliber of team that they wanted to go to. Like we could pick someone out like Nick Voltermaiden. What we did, we took advantage of that, and now he's a Newcastle player. So, but I'll be honest, boys. I've chopped and changed with will Isak go? Will Isak stay? I can't. I'll be shocked if we get news tomorrow or tonight that there's a deal agreed. I'll be absolutely shocked.
Yeah,
I just would. I'm just at the point now where I'm looking at it. I'm like, I just don't see it. I don't see it happening.
It feels too late, doesn't it, Pete? And I suppose there would be a frustration, certainly from our point of view as fans, that this just drags on the whole summer and it gets to the very final day and then he goes, because you'd almost feel like, this game of 4D chess, that's been the saying, hasn't it, this transfer window. It almost feels like, why couldn't this have happened like last week or the week before or 3 weeks ago? Because this is nothing new. This position is nothing new. Obviously, Nick Valdemade, Voldemade. I've got to sort out the pronunciation for Nick Voldemade. But that kind of came left field, didn't it? We weren't expecting it. Came out the blue. But it almost feels like to get two strikers in what it would be 4 days, in such a short period of time. I don't know. It just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like something we're going to be able to do. And I wondered as well, boys, because we saw the statement, didn't we? And Eddie's normally very, very closed shop, doesn't like to reveal anything. And he's like, yeah, still trying to get one more. And it just made me feel when I heard that. It just made me laugh and thought, everybody thinks he's talking about a striker, but it would just be, to me, it would just be Eddie Howe if it was like, oh yeah, that centre midfielder we've just signed. That's who I was talking about, not another striker. Do you know what I mean? It just, I don't know. I feel like he's playing games. I really do, and I love it.
That links into what Freuden has said there as well. Why do you think Newcastle have left the number 9 shirt available?
you know what,
If it
Daz?
was
I'm
the case
gonna
that-
tag something onto that, because that really good question. And I also want to ask this on the back of it from Dan Milne. And he says, because this could be the answer to the question, if Isak stays, do you reckon he keeps his agent? If he had to sign a new contract, I wouldn't put a release clause in there for the way he's went on. One of the responses to that question could be, new start, let's put everything behind us, or let's give him the number 9 shirt. It does make you wonder that. But Pete, you answer, mate. You go.
I think it would be a very wise move from Alexander Isak to sack his agent as soon as this window's done. As soon as this window's done, sack his agent will send a message that a lot of what's happened this summer has been led by him. Look, we know he's made certain decisions on certain things. Certain things have come out on it. Obviously, his statement on his Instagram. There's no guarantee he's in control of his Instagram. It could well be his agent doing that. We don't know, but he has to take the L on this, Alexander Isak, because he's taken responsibility of giving the okay to these things. But he's been badly advised. There's no doubt about it. Whether he gets his move today, tonight, tomorrow, or next summer, he's been badly advised this summer. It's been a horrible summer for Alexander Isak and his image, regardless of what happens. It's been a horrible summer for him. It's been a summer where he might well take years to get his reputation back. That's how big this summer is. So, if Isak stays, agent needs to be sacked, signs a new contract. I'm with you, Dan. For me, and this is why I asked Mark Douglas the question, is that I don't think fans would be quite happy with him getting this pay rise and upgrading a contract where when he's treated the club like this. I don't think he's going to go down well, whether it happens a day after, a week after, a month after, 3 months after. I don't think fans will be happy with it because of how he's treated us. But having no release clause in there would maybe sort of calm any frustrations potentially. But look, I'm still of the mindset that Isak will be adamant of certain expectations, and he'll want to leave. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, sack the agent.
I think that would be a massive rollback if he didn't have a release clause in his contract. But I don't think he'll be offered the number 9 shirt, because the number 9 shirt is iconic, and he can earn it in the future. And if he was to stay for longer than this year and prove something, look, it is possible. It'd be a lot of proving involved. And in terms of the agent, and if he's in charge of his Instagram, he could also always say he was hacked. I suppose that's always an option people use as well.
Yeah, no, the reason I wanted to pair those together is I agree with you boys. I think if Alexander Isak is still a Newcastle United player after 7 o'clock tomorrow, for me, he's got to make big moves. Got to make big moves. I said ages ago, didn't I, boys, that I felt like he's got to make a statement. He's got to come out and he's got to physically say it. About what's gone on. I think sacking his agents is a given. I think that's a really quick win, because then Alexander Isak sacked his agents. Oh, it must have all been the agents. Alexander Isak signs a new deal, and then it's announced that there's no clause in there. Oh, we're giving him the number 9 shirt because he's showing his commitment to the club. Do you know what I mean? To me, they're all stepping stones, which then put everything to one side. We've seen it before, boys. We've seen it many a time. We've spoken about Kane. We've spoken about Suarez. All these players who don't actually get the move, they throw the toys out the pram, they stamp their feet, and then the move doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden, the landscape changes. We go into the Champions League with Nick Voldemar there and Alexander Isak potentially. All is well. Newcastle, qualify for the Champions League, and all of a sudden we go, fucking hell, do you remember that summer though? It was really shit. And things improve. Alexander Isak gets his 250 grand a week contract, whatever it is. Things change in football, don't they? Money changes things. It really, really does. And I'm not suggesting that, Alexander Isak should be rewarded with a new contract at all. But I just know that, football can be fickle. It really, really can. And if Alexander Isak gets on the pitch reaffirms his commitment to Newcastle United and starts scoring goals, this will all be a distant memory. It doesn't feel that way now. It doesn't feel like that's possible. It doesn't feel like that's something that's going to happen. But as I say, we've seen bigger U-turns than this in the past. But yeah, it's going to be a big. What are we now? 22 and a half hours, is it? 21 and a half hours.
Yeah. Can I just
21 and a half, yeah.
Can I just say, I don't want Alexander Isak to wear the number 9 for Newcastle United. I don't want him to. He doesn't deserve it. But secondly, I want the next striker to wear the number 9 for Newcastle United. I want them to be a striker that wants to be here first and foremost. And secondly, I want that striker to be here for the long term. The number 9 is a striker that stays long term. We got 5 years or so out of Callum Wilson. Obviously Shearer for 10. We had a couple of years, I think, of Carroll, and obviously he didn't want to leave, but they obviously went to Liverpool. You know, Cisse was here for a number of years. A number 9 should be here for the longevity to wear that black and white shirt. I'm not giving it him just so he stays for 7-8 months and then F's off to Liverpool or somebody else. The number 9 is iconic for a reason. I want to look back. Like he's lost his legacy at Newcastle United, Alexander Isak, regardless of whether he stays, regardless if he signs a new contract and stays for the rest of the season. He's lost his legacy. I want to look back at our number 9s over the course of our history, Premier League history, long-term history. I don't want to see Alexander Isak in that. I don't want to see him in that. And it's really hard to say that because of how much I loved the guy and watched him play for Newcastle United. But he's literally ripped everything up that we loved about him this summer. And he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve it. I want to look back at the history of our number 9s and I don't want to see his name on it. So I feel really strongly about that because that number 9 means something. It doesn't mean something to every club, but it definitely means something to Newcastle United. And I don't want his name in that legacy of number 9s at all. He can stay at the number 14 and we can give it to a right winger or left winger, midfielder, somebody else when he leaves, and we can get someone to just take over that number 14. The number 9 is special and it needs to go to a player of a special ability. But that's
No. I think you're spot on, Pete. And yeah, the number 9 doesn't mean a lot at Newcastle United, doesn't it? And I think there would have to be a lot of mending of relationships for that to even be considered. But yeah, like you know, as it stands right now, the way I'm feeling, yeah, I wouldn't want him to be the new number 9. But I just think I'm just thinking of a way back in for Alexander Isak if he doesn't leave. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting, boys. It's gonna be very, very interesting, and I think we could well, boys, be getting our wish of watching him squirm and having to doff the cap, as they say, because he's gonna have an uncomfortable time if this deal doesn't go through between now and 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. Couple more things, boys. Firstly, thank you, Benny Boy, for the super chat. Much appreciated, mate. Benny Boy says Isak left it far too late to tell the club he wanted to leave in the first place. Yeah, totally,
100%,
totally. And I think that may come to bite him on the bum, because yeah, I agree. I think he left it far too late. Yeah, and if he'd done it earlier, perhaps we wouldn't be having this conversation. Perhaps he'd already be a Liverpool player. But yeah, a couple of interesting ones here, boys. So, Jono asks, could Chelsea come in for Isak tomorrow and gazump Liverpool? And I think the reason Jono's asking this is, one, because it's Chelsea and they just buy who they want, and two, we obviously saw Liam Delap get what looks like quite a significant injury, and Nicholas Jackson was on his way to buy him, wasn't it? I think he'd even landed in Germany, and then they were asking him to turn the plane round. And go on.
There's been an update on that. Florian Plettenberg just said the deal for Nicholas Jackson to Bayern is off completely now, because I think they'd said this morning that the loan move wasn't a possibility, but a permanent move was. But Bayern have now decided that they don't want to pursue it anymore, so that deal's off, and he's flying back to England. It's an interesting one, because I'm not saying it's going to happen, but is it out the realms of possibility that there's an Isak Jackson swap in there for a particular?
Great shout.
I'm not saying I want that, by the way.
No.
You boys know I've said that plenty of times. I'm not a fan of Jackson, but all I'm doing is thinking of possibilities of a second striker coming in. We know that Larson, we know that Wiese is not necessarily possible. Jackson, I think, is only possible if they get another striker in. Would people be happy to sell Isak to Chelsea just so he doesn't go to Liverpool? I don't know.
What 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. I'll come in on that. 1,000,000%. Even if you said to me, Pete, and again, this is
breaking news, guys. Sorry. Right.
Breaking news.
Luke Edwards has reported that Newcastle will finally consider selling Alexander Isak if Liverpool bid 130 million. That's the exclusive. So
that's the throwdown from Newcastle. So
yeah, right now. So Newcastle come down from before 130 million will get Alexander Isak. Deal done. That is very, very interesting. Very interesting. Big update that is, because that may tell us the direction of travel in the next 21 and a half hours. Liverpool know the price point now. They know the price point. So there we go.
Interesting. And so do other clubs as well, Pete. Let's not forget. So do other clubs. Going back to what you just said.
At the end of that, it says,
go on.
Sorry, Chris, on that article, it says, if Isak stays, Newcastle still intend to offer him a new contract with a release clause that will only become active in the summer of 2026. It's the last bit of that article. Skip to the end.
So, big update there. Lots to consider on that. So, for maybe our thoughts of it not happening, we said we needed to hear something tonight of some note to see whether that deal could potentially be done. Let's wait and see. Interesting.
Wow. You're very interesting. Yeah, no, I was just saying about Nicholas Jackson. I mean, obviously that won't happen now. What I was just about to say, I was going to say even if both prices were inflated, so Newcastle said, well, we want 150 for Isak, and we'll give you 70 for Jackson, purely based off. Obviously we know that it's all to do with how much you sell. So if we were to get our maximum price for Alexander Isak, then we would then pay a little bit more to get Nicholas Jackson, who's realistically worth about 50 million. That's, add 20 million on for Alexander Isak, add 20 million on for Nicholas Jackson, that gets the deal done. I am really surprised no other clubs are coming for him, but it does make me wonder whether, privately his representatives may have already told, these contacts at the club that, we're not interested. We only want Liverpool. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that is the case. But yeah, that is huge news. Absolutely huge news.
What that is for me, so the 130 million, that is Newcastle offering an olive branch to get this deal done, because that's the middle point. The bit that I said last night is that the value of the deal from 110 to 150 was too far apart. What Newcastle have done is almost met them halfway. They've met them halfway here. Now, will Liverpool do the extra to meet them there? We don't know. They've got an injury to Konate. Mark Gay, he seems to be the one that they're wanting to get and bid for because they need a centre-back in. Do they have the money to do both deals? Apparently, we're told they are, but we haven't seen any evidence of that. That is, for me, Newcastle United doing that is a meet in the middle. That is, and that brings a bigger potential of that deal getting done.
What it means to me is that Newcastle have someone else lined up. They're not coming with this now if they don't have someone else lined up. They have someone else lined up. We don't know who it is. Mark didn't seem to know who it was either, but he was suggesting on the continent for someone. And also in the article, Luke says, the two names we do have with Wiese and Strand Larsen, that is too difficult to do those deals, and the price has been quoted. So it does look there's a mystery striker out there that Newcastle have lined up, and that's why they're coming to Liverpool now. Why come to Liverpool now with this so late as well? They've known the stance from, because it talks about the meeting with Isaac and Jamie Rubin and the PIF representative, and how Isaac did not want to even go into this season, and then go with a release clause in next summer. So something has changed here to make them come out with this now, because they've known this. What day did that happen? That meeting that one told me it was the day we're playing the game, or Monday. So they've got Nick Fulton made over the line, and it's this mystery striker now. So all eyes on that.
130 million with 60 million add-ons. Yeah, if only. Now we've had a couple of Liverpool fans in the chat there. Lovin, who's been joining us for the past week or so. Thank you, Lovin. Lovin says she comes in peace. Lovin said, "Sorry, it's happened this way, and I don't mean it in a patronising way. Newcastle are on the up." So yeah, nice comments. I think. I mean. Do you know what I say I'm disappointed, but like I did feel like 130 was the sweet spot. I felt it for a while, and it goes back. I'll have to have a proper read of Mark's. I'll have to have a proper read of Mark's article in terms of what it unlocks for us PSR wise. But yeah, it's interesting because as we've discussed on here for a while, we signed Alexander Isak for 63 million. He's been here with us for 3 years, so you assume we owe about 30 million on him. If we then get 130 million for Alexander Isak, that's 100 million of pure profit, and we know what that does in terms of unlocking. So that 130 million feels like the minimum that we should be taking. I mean, the 110 was never an option, was it, boys? 110 was never an option. It had to be higher than that. But now I suppose we just wait and see. But Pete, what are your initial thoughts on that? Because obviously you broke it to us just then. But how are you feeling? What are your thoughts on that breaking news?
I think that tweet out there is a big indication of where Newcastle United sit right now. I think Newcastle United are in a position right now where they, I believe, feel comfortable to sell Alexander Isak. I think that's the first time that we've seen it. That I said it's an olive branch. It absolutely is. It meets in the middle to get the deal done, to move Alexander Isak on, and to give him his move to Liverpool. That's how I feel about this situation. Do I think a deal it gets done? I think that there puts all the emphasis on Liverpool. And I've just tweeted it out. I've said, if Liverpool don't act on that, if they don't act on that and put a bid in for 130 million to get this deal done, it is absolutely on Liverpool. Liverpool are the only ones that have got to answer to that, because Newcastle have dropped they've said 150 million for all the way through. They've now dropped it and said they'll do a deal for 130, which, by the way, is still a massive transfer fee. Let's not forget this. It's still a huge transfer fee.
British record.
And it's transformative. Everyone go and read Mark Douglas's piece on the PSR and the potentials of this silver bullet of this transfer fee. He does say in there's a potential, if it's any closer to 150 million, anywhere around that, 130 definitely is, we can potentially sign up to 5 players worth around £50 million. Bearing in mind, we've only done a couple this summer. It's massive in terms of being transformative. So for me, I think this deal is leaning towards getting done. This is exactly what Liverpool have been wanting for a while now. So go and do it. Go and get your guy. Give us the 130 million and let's get this signed off. That's how it should be right now. But if they don't do it, it's on Liverpool. And Liverpool have only got themselves to blame. Liverpool fans are going mad today. FSG out, I've seen hashtags of. Liverpool have failed. Liverpool have done this. That's coming from Liverpool fans. This is on the back of today and Ornstein's quotes. That's what's been out today. So Liverpool have now been given a golden opportunity to go and get Alexander Isak. Go take it. Give us 130 million. Go and get his medical done, and let's get it sorted. That's why.
Does this as well towards Isak, right? Let's say Liverpool don't come in with the 130 million, and the deal doesn't get done. That at least they can go back to Isak and say, well, look, we've laid out our price, we reduced our price for you, and they still didn't come in. What more can we do for you here? There's nothing more we can do. So it is the ball in this game of tennis is back in the Liverpool side of the court. Whether they want to play a ball or not, let's see. And I believe we've got something lined up for us that we'll push the button on if Liverpool do come in with that bid that we want.
Yeah. Very, very mixed views in the chat. Very, very mixed views. There's some people saying, get them gone. Let's get this deal done. A bit like what Pete just said there. And then there's other people in the chat who were disappointed. They were hoping that Newcastle would stand firm in that 150 million price tag. There's some people saying that apparently it's been shut down already, the rumour. So yeah, but whether that's just denial, I don't know. We have been on this emotional roller coaster many, many times this window. Apparently that rumour. I don't know who by.
This is the article from Luke Edwards.
Yeah.
So someone's already shut it down.
Somebody wrote it. Somebody wrote that in the chat.
Oh dear. Oh.
Look, well, we do need like a couple of more sources to come up with this as well. Yeah. But Luke is the only one that's mentioned it so far. 11 minutes ago.
Yeah, and Luke, for anyone who hasn't been following Luke Edwards this window, Luke Edwards has been the one who's been adamant that Alexander Isak won't be sold. So for Luke Edwards to come out with that's quite a U-turn. So yeah, it feels quite significant, I would say. Yeah. That's certainly how we're taking it, isn't it, boys? It feels significant.
This is what we were looking for all day. We were looking for this update to say that something is in the works to potentially happen. And this is why I say this is Newcastle offering an olive branch. This is Newcastle saying, let's get a deal done. They're basically putting all the emphasis on Liverpool now. Liverpool now have a decision to make. They know the price point. They know what Newcastle United are willing to take. Are you going to put the money down to get that deal done? That's how I see this situation now. Now, some people will say, get rid of him, go. Some people will say that's a come down, maybe from the 150 million. But remember, it's still a massive fee. 130 million is still a huge fee. It's a British record fee. It's still a huge fee. It's still transformative to us. There's still positives to this, absolutely. But I understand why fans are not particularly happy with it, seeing it is come down.
But it's us putting this out though. It's not Liverpool coming in with another 115 million. It's us saying, here, this is the price. We're willing to sell it now. So we're still in control.
Lee Owens has said, let's poll it. 130 million, yes or no. I don't know how quickly, if we're able.
There's already a poll running. I forgot to look at it. We can quickly do that. Give us a second.
Just while Luke's tweeted again, and he said on the back of that, the big question, will Liverpool actually offer this amount to give Newcastle a decision to make? I still think it could all hinge on Newcastle knowing there was a replacement lined up if they do sell. Less than 24 hours to find one. Now, that potentially fits into the narrative, people, and people that are just joining us now, because we've had a flurry of people jump on when this news is broke. We had Mark Douglas for this, and Mark Douglas actually said, there could well be a possibility that Newcastle already are working on an alternative to Larson Wieser in the background, like Nick Voltemade, and he mentioned that could well be a possibility. Well, Now, that could ring more truth, potentially, if Newcastle have given a price point in which to do this deal. Have Newcastle got a lined up striker ready to go? That's the big thing. If we hear a name, lads, tonight or tomorrow morning of a player that Newcastle United are interested in getting a deal done for, this deal's getting done. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, totally.
If we hear this name, it's not
totally.
That it's not Larson, Wiese, it's a different name, or maybe that there's been a come down from Brentford or Wolves, which I don't believe there will be. There's a different name that pops up tomorrow. This means this deal is getting done. It just does. So this is great. You know what?
Yes, there's a poll going now. Keep or sell is the poll for 130 million to Liverpool.
The
earlier poll, sorry, Pete. The earlier poll was, will Isak still be a Newcastle player by this time tomorrow? 63% said yes. 36% said no, and there was 475 votes in that one. So let's keep an eye.
I don't know how to vote on this. I don't know how I feel about it.
It's got a lot of people. We can see in the chat. There's got a lot of people with mixed opinions about it, because I think there was a lot of people going into it today. I didn't go into it today feeling this way, but I thought as we got into the show and into the evening, I didn't think there'd be an update on it. Now there is. Like, my feelings have changed again. I do think there is something in this. Now, what's interesting as well is that Craig Hope's tweeted that as well. And I think it's a little snippet of what he said last night after the Leeds game. But he said, I've reported all summer Newcastle are willing to explore a sale and figure of 130 million has been discussed for weeks. Nothing's changed. We're just reaching the end game. So, in his opinion, there's always been a possibility of a 130 million pound deal. Oh, yeah, there you go, from David. But nothing's really changed. There hasn't been any movement from Liverpool. Liverpool is still in the position that they are. Does this move? I think if Liverpool really want the player, Liverpool need to act now, regardless of whether we've got a replacement or not. Liverpool need to show their intent to sign the player and put a bid down. This is all on Liverpool for me. As Mark said tonight, and as we've already said, we hold the cards here because we've still got both players' registrations. It's up to Liverpool to act.
Hey, just to add in there, I've made my choice. I'll tell you what my choice was. We've had 114 votes so far, boys. Okay, 51% of the votes have said sell Isak. 49%.
I know 50-50.
Oh, is it 50-50?
I press keep. Yeah, so it's 50-50.
50-50. That just shows you how split it is. 50-50. So that's 120 votes, I think, when I last looked. 122 votes, and it's 50-50. That just shows you, doesn't it, how split
51
the fan base is.
51 keep.
Keeps
Sorry, no,
shopping.
51 sell. 51 sell. Oh no,
Wow.
it's going literally in live. It keeps switching.
It goes
from 51 sell to 49 to then back to 50-50. So people must still be voting. The votes are going up.
Out of interest, boys, just as another caveat to this, do you think Newcastle are wanting the 130 up front with add-ons, or do you think that it may be 120 with 10 million add-ons to make it 130? How do you see that?
Don't know. It's 130 in cash before 7 o'clock tomorrow, or we keep them.
Briefcase in cash, is that what you're after?
What? Put them in a briefcase? That's a bit much, Pete. But no. Yeah, I know what you mean.
What do you think?
Large bills.
I don't think Newcastle fans would be happy with that.
No, I don't.
It'd be like 110 million plus add-ons to make it 130 or 120 plus add-ons to make it. It needs, I think, but I think the ownership might feel like that as well. They'll want a straight out 130 million. like as a minimum fee. They'll want that 130 million to be on the books straight away. You know, because the add-ons come on a little bit later. They'll want that 130 on the book straight away. I think that's what the ownership will want. It's whether Liverpool are willing to pay it.
The other thing, boys, is this has all been going on in the background for the last week, and we're only being fed this information now. Now it's time to press the button on that today at this time, and it's all been done in the background. It's all agreed already.
That makes
play out to the media now.
Yeah, that is a comment that David R's just put in. David R, I think PIF wants our fans to understand Liverpool will not get anywhere near the 150, and this is why the 130 number is being circulated this evening to control our expectations, so that if and when that button is pushed, Newcastle said they wanted 130, Liverpool paid the 130, we got what we wanted. Who knows? Who knows?
Luke's just tweeted again in response to that, in response to Toon Polls, actually. So he's put, it's not done. Many twists are still possible. Liverpool said they would pay 120 million, not 130. I think it would be madness to let him go if they can't get a replacement, meaning Newcastle. Let's just say the pressure is on PIF now. Hold firm or buckle, because if they do sell, it's capitulation, which I agree with. I agree with to a point, but I don't think the pressure is on PIF at this point, because PIF don't have a decision to make. There is no bid. There is no bid at this point. But I do agree with him that if there is a bid of, say, 120 million plus add-ons like we've just discussed, I think there is a big decision from PIF. Do they stick to their guns and say, no, I want our value met, complete? Or do they agree to a negotiation, which will seem like a capitulation, which is what Luke Edwards is talking about, because they've stood firm for over a year now. For nearly a year now with Alexander Isak in terms of the value from when Arsenal were linked to them. It would seem bad on them, not on us as fans, but bad on them to come down on that with 20 hours to go when they're so close to that deadline and they've stuck to their guns all the way through. It would feel a little bit like you've just kind of allowed it to happen at that point. I don't know how that would look. So there's a lot of mixed emotions there.
Do you think this is a fair comment from John? John says, guys, let's be realistic. No one was ever going to pay 150 unless it was a Saudi club. Do you think we've been consistent, haven't we, with this 150 million figure? And I do think that figure has been, I do think that figure has kind of, been prominent because of some of the deals that have been done recently. Hugo Ekitike, Benjamin Sesko, Florian Wirtz, all players like that for coming in for huge sums of money. So you can understand why Newcastle want a premium price. But do you think 130 feels about right? Do you agree that, would you be, transfer window slams shut tomorrow, boys, and Alexander Isak's left for 130 million? Do you feel like we've undersold them? Or do you think that that's probably about right?
I wouldn't take any less than 130.
Yeah.
Anything less than 130 is not doubling our money. What did we pay for him? 63 million?
63.
Yeah. So you're looking at 126-ish, depending on if it was 63 million completely. I wouldn't accept anything less than. I think he is worth double than what we paid for him when we bought him from Real Sociedad. So for that reason, I wouldn't be accepting anything less than 130 million. So I think that is fine. That's the bottom end of his value. But yeah, I think with the potential that he's got at 25, nearly 26 years old, I think 150 million is fair. I think in an inflated market in the last year, particularly this summer, in how much an inflated market is, I think 150 million is fair. Now, If Liverpool can't afford that, that's fine. But I think we've come down on that to meet them at our bottom value of Alexander Isak. And I think we've been more than reasonable here. I think there's fans clearly out there that are like, nah, 150, no, 160. That's what we should be. And they're right to feel like that. But I think the fact that we've come down to our bottom end value of Alexander Isak, I think we've been more than reasonable. So it's on Liverpool now. Absolutely on Liverpool.
I need to see the full picture of who we're bringing in before I can comment on that, Chris, your original question. But if it's a case of that we're just left with Nick Waltermaid, Anthony Gordon, who is a winger, and Asula, who I don't think is a striker either, then and then a shitload of money in the bank for January in the summer, I think that's a mistake. So I need to see who we're bringing in. Either way, we're like if that deal goes through at 130 million, we're going to have busy transfer windows into the future, but it's not going to be much good to us in this one if we're not bringing in someone else.
Yeah,
yeah. Just to throw in there, I think the people in the chat that were rubbishing, or apparently it's already been rubbished, Luke Edwards. I think they're referring to Indicator. Who just for me is nonsense. He's basically get my words out. He's quote tweeted and said complete rubbish. Thanks for coming. That's what he's responded in relation to that. Now Indicator, I don't listen to. So if people are thinking that's rubbishing what Luke Edwards has said, I don't quite agree with that.
I've ended the poll. There was 185 votes, so it's 51-49. So 51 to sell, 49 to keep. So it's still 50-50 with people as well. So some people are going to be happy, some people are not. Come tomorrow.
Yeah.
KFC worker.
Couple. I know we're going to finish in a few minutes, boys. But couple of comments here of stars because I think they're well. I think they're interesting. I'm going to bring them up. But Nobby Clark, thank you very much, Nobby, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Nobby says the article says even without replacement, and then he's put weak. To me, and I'm going to follow this up, Nobby, and I'm going to ask the boys this question very quickly. Kamal Kism says to make the statement means we have a replacement, and GK3719 says Luke Edwards' article is the encouragement that has been referenced for weeks. This isn't done unless there is a replacement lined up, and it's kind of what we've just been talking about. So, boys, what I want to ask you is, if this 130 million bid comes in, we've now heard the new price point of 130 as opposed to 150. Do you believe that a striker has been lined up? And do you think that the reason this statement has been released by Luke Edwards, you would think that it's come from a source at the club? Do you believe that the reason that this statement's been issued is because a replacement has indeed been lined up?
We've got 1 minute left in the show. We're now at, I do believe we have a replacement. We're now, I said 33% the other day because Nick Waltermaid come in. We're now at 66% for this deal to go through. If you think about it, because it looks like we have that replacement lined up. Then the next bit is for Liverpool to agree the fee that we want. Then it's 100% it gets done.
Yeah. Pete?
We cannot sell Alexander Isak without replacement. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah.
Well, just before we wrap up, thank you everyone for watching. It's been a fantastic show. Mark Douglas was on earlier. If you missed it, make sure you have a little rewind, get back to the start and watch Mark's views. Very, very interesting. And yeah, we've got a very interesting, 20 and a bit hours remaining of the transfer window. And obviously for anyone who's only just tuning in, we've had news from Luke Edwards today that apparently the price for Alexander Isak is 130 million. That is the price that Newcastle United wants. Now we wait and we see whether or not Liverpool will come up with that money.
Great show.
See you soon, people. We may not be done yet. Good night, everyone. not over till it's over. See you in the next one. I hate this window. Good night, everyone.